This podcast is dedicated to sharing the practice of meditation, the philosophy of Western Buddhism, and the refuge and love of our TBC Sangha. Offering solutions that are simple, practical, and true. We believe happiness and better health are available to all people and for all people. We are here each week to lend wisdom and support to all who are making or considering making this journey. This is On the Range. Hello and welcome to episode number 4 of On the Range. I'm your host, Whit, and I am pleasantly surprised we made it to episode number 4. The purpose of this offering is to share meditation, Western Buddhism, and the power of the Sangha with any and all interested people. A shout out to our TBC Sangha and to all of our listeners. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you're here. And I'm very glad Mr. Tim Berhens is here. Tim is our co-host this week. He's also the driving force in creating and sharing of the show. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So, Tim, let's start by talking a little bit about our personal relationship. And
Sure.
It's a bit of a cool curve for you, but we have worked on this show together for 2 months, 8 weeks, something like that.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting, and I may be the only one, Tim, but we were hooked up because we both are members of the Temple Buddhist Center Sangha, and you were kind enough to get involved with not only listening to what we wanted to accomplish, but also providing the technical expertise to actually get it off the ground. So this is a long way of just publicly thanking you for that. And when I say you're the driving force, I mean that because my part is my part and I can do that. But after that, I'm pretty lost. So thank you. It's been a huge pleasure and can't thank you enough for your patience and your guidance.
Thank you so much. And I do appreciate that. And also really just want to recognize in my mind that you are the driving force behind this, that, it has been wonderful to see your vision, to be a part of these planning meetings, to be a part of community and talking about what you want to create or what we all want to create and how we want to share in community. And so I'm really grateful after having many years in the IT world to finally be using some of those skills to support an effort that I really believe in, that I feel passionately about. So it brings me a lot of joy to be able to bring some of that knowledge into this space. And I'm grateful for that opportunity.
It's been a tremendous partnership. We have other members of the team, and they also play a key role. But again, just getting together and kind of sharing this vision and getting it off the ground has been hugely rewarding. We'll see where it goes. But having something like this develop organically has also been just the right way. It's felt like the right path for what our vision was. So let me ask you about your meditation practice. Can you tell us a little bit about how it developed and where it is now?
Sure. It's been an on and off kind of thing for many years. And one of the things that I've learned is that I used to approach it from this idea of, like, if you're familiar with the app Insight Timer, it was almost gamified for me at one point where it was almost, I didn't want to lose my streak, so I would get my meditation in it every day. And then 150 days went by once, and on 151st day, I came down with the flu or something and couldn't do it. And then in my mind, it was like, oh, it's all over. I can't do it anymore. And over the years, I've come to realize that any practice is of value. So I may have days where it doesn't resonate as much, but if I can just make that conscious intention to sit down and really just give myself some space, it's been a wonderful way to start the day. I'm learning through meditation that idea of how much I have this noisy narrative that's always in my head, and how easily I can attach to those stories. And when I take the time to exercise that muscle of being in silence, of focusing on my breath, of allowing those thoughts to come and go and not attaching to them, that the more I do that, the more I create space from the narrative and I can be more present for what is as I move through my day. So it's become pretty foundational for me just to, and one of the other things that happens for me too is I recognize if I've been in if I am in a streak where I've been doing it a lot, I start to feel magically better. Things feel really great in my day. And then what happens is I find the energy to go out in the world and do all of these things. And part of me will sometimes forget that it's the practice that has led me to that place of feeling great. And then things start to slip a little bit, and then I return to the practice. And I'm trying to give myself grace for that. But as the years have gone by, I'm really bringing in that recognition that that simple act of sitting and giving myself that space from the narrative has been transformative.
That's so key. Well, a couple of things you hit on. One is the magic that you end up with when you strip away everything else, when you just make time to sit and to be and to not judge and not plan. It's amazing what you end up with, and it's amazing how that practice floods into the rest of your life. And that's so powerful. And it's kind of upper level stuff. When people start, they don't tend to think in those terms. They think meditation will help me be more calm and more relaxed and less stressful. And that's all true. And those are excellent reasons to have a practice. But as you continue to evolve and as you start to learn that, hey, I'm not going to force myself and I'm not going to judge this, you start to realize that life works so much better when you don't force anything and you don't judge anything. So I think that's so interesting, and so it's profound, but it's also accessible to anybody. It sounds deep, it sounds heavy and hard, but it's just the opposite.
Yeah, one of the things that came up for me very early on, I remember being in my first group meditations and having that experience, and I was grateful for the people around me who were far more experienced, but having that experience of noticing how busy my thoughts were and how much chatter was going on. And I think a lot of people have that experience of having that happen and then saying to themselves, well, I must not be doing it right. I must be doing something wrong, or even saying meditation must not be for me because I can't get into that silence. And slowly through the conversations with people around me, realizing, well, this is everyone's experience. It's like it is the nature of the human mind to constantly be narrating and dialoguing. And the practice really for me has become just how not to attach to that. It really, I hear Victor say in services sometimes, that you can return to your breath 1,000 times, and 1,000 times is never too much. That sometimes that's what's required in order to slow down, that it's just that focusing like a muscle of like, there's another thought, return to the breath. There's another thought, return to the breath. And then if I find, and even if I'm only doing it for 10 minutes, if I find a minute of peace in that, it's still a minute of peace that I didn't have before. And it's still a little bit of space that allows me to connect more to the observer that's not the story. And then that opens up this more expansive view of what life is and what it means and how to move through it and how not to attach. And yeah.
You mentioned also how, and I think this is still pretty common for me after 20 plus years of practicing. Some days it's difficult. Some days it's still, for whatever reason, you have a lot going on, you don't feel well, whatever those challenges might be. And when you first start out, those can make you think, as you stated, I'm not doing it right, I can't do this. When in fact, all those are just the days you have to slog through it a little bit. I don't know why slog has become my verb choice when I talk about that experience, but it is. And when that happens, I think it's so important that people remember that you're still getting the benefits, because it's not something that can be judged. There is no good or bad practice. that's the whole, again, that's that magic to it, is once you realize that it can't be judged and that it works either way, you start to see that space between who you truly are and your ego or whatever's judging. And again, you gain a little freedom. I also think it's interesting you mentioned, returning to the breath, or returning, 1,000 times isn't too many. It's funny to me how you hear something and it doesn't mean anything to you 100 times. And then on that one magic occasion, it hits, it's for you, it sticks. And for me, those things never really go away once they stick. And that's one of the sayings that Victor, and I've heard Robert say it as well at TBC, just understanding that you get distracted, it's no big deal. You find your breath again, you go back to that. And when you start and you first realize everything that's going on in your head, it can be really discouraging, because you think, I can't do this because obviously I'm crazy. Obviously I'm the only one who has thoughts going so quickly and I'm out of control. But you start to realize that that's what everybody goes through. So,
right. And it is a normalizing experience to even be able to talk about these things, because I think that's what happens sometimes too, is that we have perhaps a rigid idea of what meditation means or what it's supposed to accomplish. But really, when we think about mindfulness, it's really that practice of being present in the moment for whatever it is. And sometimes it's the chaos, and sometimes it's the peace, the ebb and flow. It's like not attaching, but just being there for it. And I do love that word practice too, because it truly is a practice. I play guitar, and I think about music in terms like, if I don't play guitar for a month, I lose all of the calluses on my fingers. And when I pick it up again and start to play, it becomes a little painful at first. I have to rebuild that, just like you would a muscle. And I see meditation in the same way, that the more I do it, the more it becomes less of a chore, and I move into those spaces of feeling excitement or joy or peace, serenity, acceptance, understanding, self-compassion. Sometimes also having the strength to be more present for the things that are more challenging, the struggles, the mourning, the grief, all of those things. If I can be with those without the attachment as well, then they can move through me. Like, sometimes it's the resistance or resisting those feelings that makes them even stronger. And yeah.
I was just going to add that I have started approaching those challenging moments, whether it's sad, bad, whatever I think it is, or something that I'm dreading, or whatever that is, as those opportunities, for your practice. So, for example, anytime I feel an emotion that I don't want to say they're bad or wrong, because obviously they're not, but it's causing me some suffering, I've learned, and I'm not great at it, but I'm good at it, okay, let's pull that out. Let's look at that. Let's walk around it, see what it is. Let's understand that it's trying to tell me something. So you mentioned playing guitar. I play some racquetball. I'm not a good racquetball player, but I played for a long time and I enjoy it. What I noticed over the last couple of years was I would get uncomfortable because I didn't want to lose. And I'm not a bad sport, but I started to realize that what I was trying to teach myself was the sport is a beautiful chance to be creative and get some exercise and do all these really enjoyable things. And I was ruining it by judging, what the score was. And life is so much better when you can look beyond the scoreboard, whatever it is. It's even better if you just tear down the damn scoreboard, right? But until then, until we get that work order in and completed, what we've got to do is just kind of look past it and just remember that. So that's what practice has done for me. And it really is life changing, because now you're not afraid of things, or not afraid as near as much. You're looking for these challenges because you realize this is a chance for me to grow. This is a chance for me to suffer less. And if you suffer less, it's addition by subtraction. I'm going to suffer less, so I'm going to be happier. So
yeah, I love the example of racquetball too. What comes to mind for me is this idea of Well, I'm thinking of Tai Chi Cha or Qigong or any of these movement practices that are essentially energy work. You know, they've refined the movements and the forms in such a way that they're moving energy and they're aligning, centering in their body, and that becomes the meditation, that awareness, and that flow state, that singular focus state that music or sports can be as well. And sometimes we don't look at sports or music in that way, but really anything that puts us in that place where that critical mind is offline and we are just present for what is. And in that same sense, I think that sometimes I have had people ask me, like, what do you really get from meditation? How is it that sitting for even 10 or 15 minutes a day, how does that translate into the rest of your life? And it is like that, it is that practice or that habit of doing something in a more controlled space that you can then translate into the rest of your life. Like if I can create space from my narratives in those moments of sitting, the more I do that, the more I'm training my mind and maybe my body as well to be able to connect to those in places and spaces that are more stressful or chaotic, that I can find myself finding more of those moments in, Thich Nhat Hanh talked in, The Miracle of Mindfulness about that idea of meditating when doing the dishes or walking upstairs, whatever that is. It's like whatever is happening, does it have to be a chore? Or can it be something that I can be truly present for? Can I notice all of the intricacies and all of those details that make life so magical, really, when we're
Right.
there?
So I think when I look back on why I started meditation, trying to be honest with that time and who and how I was then, I think I was trying to find a way to better understand some fear that I had. And I don't know what I was afraid of. That's probably, I just know that when I look back, that's what I think it drove me. And I'm curious, do you remember why you took up meditation? Do you remember what motivated you to start?
Wow, that is such a good question. And I know
Also,
I
I'm
could
sorry.
create a lot of space.
Yeah, it wasn't on the outline I sent you either. So that was
Yeah.
so
No,
much for the softballs.
it's a really great question. If I went back far enough, I would say, and this is something I'm trying to become more comfortable talking about, but I went through some depression in my mid-20s. And when I came out on the other side of that, it was really, I had some empowering moments in time where I realized that I did have control over some of my life. It may not be how I felt in every moment, but there were things that I could do to move me forward and to empower myself to live more aligned with how I actually wanted to feel and be in the world. And I feel like during that time that meditation was something that kind of came into my experience, probably through friends. I remember going to group meditations that were hosted in people's houses and really not fully understanding what I was getting into, but wanting to understand more that there was a different way of being that might bring me some peace and calm, and that really did become a foundation for living a different kind of life.
So first of all, I apologize for putting you on the spot. That was not really.
That's
We
okay.
we start to share these ideas and these stories, and I never know where it's going to take us. And a lot of times, the last thing I think about is, should I have said that? Should I have asked that? So that's on me. That's one of the reasons why I've so enjoyed working together and putting this together, because it has been, to the best of our abilities, as pure as we can make it. Again, since we're not recruiting Buddhists or trying to convert anybody or make money or really even, make any sort of dent in the public perception of Buddhism and meditation, other than to share and to try to be as honest as we can, it's allowed us to get here pretty quickly. So, and I've really enjoyed that. That was always the goal. I also, if you don't mind, I was curious. Meditation has gotten us here.
hmm
How did Buddhism become a spiritual endeavor for you, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, probably about, well, and first of all, too, I want to say too, I love those moments, certainly as someone who is into authentic relating practices. I enjoy being vulnerable now. That idea of I'm not spending energy to hide a part of myself from the world, and trusting in others to react and own their own experiences. And so sometimes that's where the magic is, right? Those things that feel vulnerable become our point of connection. And so I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that, yeah, that it all feels good to me. So as far as Buddhism goes, I remember moving here to Kansas City probably around, it's been about 23 years ago, and I started coming to Unity Temple to see some of the speaker series that were there. And just over time, kind of learning of the Temple Buddhist Center. And I can't remember exactly when it was that I first went to a meditation service, but having a curiosity about it. I remember learning that one of the former heads of the center was both teaching Buddhism and also was a Christian minister. And I was fascinated by that idea that there didn't have to be a conflict of belief, that, Buddhism in so many ways, Western Buddhism in particular, is focusing on that idea of how do we know ourselves? How do we live more contented lives? The science of the mind, bringing in psychology to give us perspective, and not necessarily having to address or conflict with any given belief. That it seemed like such an inclusive space and Sangha that I felt welcome from the very first time I walked in. And I think over the years, just starting to gravitate more and more to that. And and here we are.
I think a lot of people at the TV Sangha in particular have that experience or has an experience like that where they found it to be very open and welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing that works for so many people with Western Buddhism, especially Buddhism in general, but Western Buddhism in particular, is that because we don't have 2,500 years of history, because we don't have a lot of monasteries, there's not a lot of hierarchy. We have stories from the East that we certainly look to for guidance, but really this is happening in real time. Western Buddhism, especially as we practice at TBC, and I'm going to lean on that because I don't know if there's another center that does it quite the way we do. Probably not, but I don't know for sure. But, there are no real rules. The only real, you have to be responsible for yourself to the best of your ability, but it's truly a refuge. And if you want to come, nobody cares what you bring with you as long as you're being honest and sincere. And I think the people that stay find that so refreshing and begin to find energy to help, push that along. That it's not a dogma, it's not a plan, it's not nobody's concerned about how big the Sangha gets. Mm-hmm. Nobody's concerned, at least not very many people, about what its finances look like. There's no advertising, there's no long-term plan other than it's a refuge. We're here for everyone and everyone is welcome. Come be responsible, come be yourself. And you have the nature to be a good person. You have something that we want and need. And if that's how you feel, please be a part of it. And if it's not how you feel, please move on. But again, it's a refuge. So that's what I love about Western Buddhism. I was curious, do you feel the same way? Do you see it that way as well?
I do. I mean, just as you're saying that, I'm really reflecting on the Sangha, the community itself. I know for me, one of the attractions has really been getting to know all of the different people, and even more so the fact that it is such a diverse environment. There are so many different ideas and modalities and ways of interacting. And I had a moment at a service a few weeks back where I was sitting in the back and just watching people come in. And there were so many different people that I knew and interacted with, yourself included, for different reasons. and just having this moment of reflecting, like having wanted community for so many years, and to realize that I was sitting in what I had wanted. Makes me emotional to say that, but that it's like, oh, this is something that doesn't happen overnight. And if I were speaking to someone who was considering entering the community or exploring that, I would even want to say that, to say, it can feel nerve-wracking to move into new spaces, where you don't feel like you know anyone, and yet it is such a welcoming space that if you just give it that time, more and more, it's like, oh, there are so many wonderfully supportive people. And I often say to myself that I must be doing something right to be surrounded by this Sangha and all of the inspiration and all of the support and kindness. And yeah, so just really grateful. And also to have gone through that evolution, to know that it is a process, and what a gift to give to yourself, to be able to allow yourself to go into those unknown spaces to explore something new.
When we talk Western Buddhism on the range, it's pretty quick that our Sangha, the Sangha that we know, it becomes intermixed, and that's beautiful, and that's fun, and that's why we love both of those subjects. That's why they're so dear.
Yeah.
I think for people that are new to Western Buddhism, or considering it, or maybe not in the Kansas City area, so it's not really easy to access TBC. I think it's important to point out that while Buddhism, if you're not familiar with it, seems like a very foreign, it's different, it's from the East. I think it's important that people understand that TBC in particular is very much committed to, as a place of refuge, as a community, everyone is welcome. There's no membership. There's no, like I said, there's no rules. There's not really a set way that you have to do things or be, other than just be real, be true, come and see for yourself. Much like meditation, much like what the Buddha taught. Just don't follow us. Come and be a part of us. Come and share and see if it's, and take in what's right for you. And I guess what I'm trying to say in a really poor way is that it's incredibly accessible. And it's not something that should intimidate anyone, because it's well, as Victor likes to say, Buddhism does not come as a conqueror, it comes as a pilgrim. So when it shows up in a new area or a new part of the world, it comes humble, and it wants whatever it finds right there is part of the process and the practice. And again, I've probably spun this way out, but I just wanted for people to understand how accessible it is. And if you're not sure, but you're curious, TBC is accessible online. It's all you have to do is look up Temple Buddhist Center, Kansas City, and you'll find it. So you may want to, I just want to share that, because it is an amazing thing. And if you want a spiritual home, if you want a community, if you want a place where you can be not just told about what's sacred and holy, but actually be that piece of it, because we're really looking, that's what we expect from our members sooner or later, right? They become part of this, and that's where the magic happens. TBC is worth checking out. So, you know what? There's no question there. But again, I'm curious, what would you say to somebody who might be considering Buddhism or Western Buddhism?
Well, I think you bring up a good point. And certainly I am no expert on Eastern Buddhism, but I do understand that there are ways of approaching it that are more about ritual, that are more tightly tied into Eastern cultures, that are I don't want to, I guess I could say dogmatic, but I don't mean that in a bad way, but there are certain principles and practices that become like daily living in some ways. And I think the invitation of Western Buddhism, as I understand it in my own experience, is really to have curiosity about things. So if someone were to come in and discover that meditation was a fruitful practice for them, and that it brought them insight and connection or peace of mind, whatever that is, that in and of itself could be enough. the invitation is to explore, but someone may come in here and hear a Dharma talk and find some piece of knowledge or some perspective that helps them live their life in a slightly different way, that brings more peace or comfort. And I just believe that there is that opportunity to be in the diversity and at the same time to really find what works for you, and to have that openness to be able to talk about it with others, where it's the expectation is not that I'm going to believe in the exact way that you believe, that we are exploring and meeting each other as we are in the practice.
Right. We're not really interested in getting people together to believe a certain thing. We're really interested in getting people together and seeing what they have to offer. And again, you mentioned it earlier, how it feels so wonderful to be a part of that community. And it was never my goal to be a part of a community. I just practiced long enough and started to, I don't know, relate maybe to some of the things that Victor and TBC were sharing. And so as I got more involved, like in projects like this one, for example, you and I have both got other things that we do through TBC. It's not for money, and it's not for power, and it's not for glory. It's because we want to give, and we love the community. So again, I think it's so important. If people don't have a community, this is a good place to look. And it is an incredible feeling when you see all these people that you really don't have anything in common with, other than the fact you look around and you're like going, these are all people being themselves. We don't have to agree on stuff. We can get along. And because we're relaxed and practicing awareness and acceptance and developing space, we all fit. We're all welcome here. And not only are we more thriving here. So, again, I think I've spun out of control a little bit, but we start talking and this is going to happen. I wanted to give you a couple of minutes. Just tell me a little bit about how meditation, Buddhism, how it's affected what you're doing with authentic relating.
Sure. First and foremost, I mean, on a very practical level, when I think about the community in the Sangha, Temple Buddhist Center in particular, it's been a very welcoming space. And I know that as part of that inclusive environment of bringing in psychology, bringing in lessons from other, teachings, that there has been this openness to exploring connection and communication. And so I know in the past there have been classes on nonviolent communication. There's been classes around interplay, allowing people to express and be creative as adults, to see what it feels like to connect to our inner child. Authentic relating was something I discovered just before the world shut down in 2020, when it was a connection practice, people coming together to have deeper, more meaningful conversations, to create containers that felt safer to interact with in that way. And just being invited into the space to share that practice with people. Because I do believe on some level, in so many different ways, our explorations, we're looking inward to understand ourselves better, to create that space, to create that non-attachment and things. But ultimately, too, we are biologically wired for connection. So can we find that balance where we are in community with each other, where we are learning and growing together, because that is the experience of life. And for me, it's what makes things rich. So I'm just very grateful that I've been given that opportunity to be able to bring some of those practices and experiences into Sangha, and certainly even getting to speak recently at the Sacred Arts and Hearts. Did I say that right? I get that wrong. Okay, to be able to speak about hypnotherapy in that space where they're inviting other people from different modalities to come in and find where that overlap is. And I think that's the richness of it, is like looking for the things we have in common, or looking for the things these practices and paths have in common, so that we can just enrich our experiences any way they come to us. And yeah, so I just have a great deal of gratitude for that opportunity, and hope to continue sharing in whatever way I can.
Now, before we completely close this, I just want to say again, thank you for all that you've done to make this happen and continued, all your continued support. I look forward to working together on this and hopefully other projects, but this is near and dear to both of us. I really appreciate also your honesty and your ability to touch on those deep subjects and do it with so much skill. So thank you. Really appreciate you. I want to thank you for co-hosting episode number 4 of On the Range with me today. It's been a pleasure having you as a co-host. It's also been tremendous working with you on this project.
I am really grateful. Yeah, grateful.
Yeah, I was just going to say also that because of all your hard work, that entitles you to all of the credit and some of the blame. I'm also very thankful to our audience for listening to episode 4. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them on our Spotify page. You can go to the TBC Discord channel, or you can email us at omontherange@gmail.com. This is Om on the Range signing off, wishing you happy trails. Thank you to Mr. Tim Berhens for producing this episode, and thank you to Brad Athey for providing the music. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey as we discuss meditation and Western Buddhism and celebrate the path to a happier and healthier life. Less suffering and more joy are available to all people. While we cannot control what happens to us, we can control how we react. It just takes practice. Until next time, stay grounded and find peace in the simple, practical solutions. This is Om on the Range, wishing you happy trails.